This isn't a story anymore. It's a war. You've got one chance to back down, or you'll be buried under the system your TR. Aim to fix. Click. Tyrell stared at the phone, heart racing. He had spoken truth to power, and now, power was preparing its answer. The price of the truth. The city woke up different the next morning. Every news outlet was buzzing about the forum. Some hailed Tyrell as the voice of a generation. Others accused him of glorifying rebellion. But one thing was clear. Everyone was talking. Inside the community center, a small TV played highlights on loop. Tyrell, mid-speech. The girl in the crowd. Senator Klein's frozen face. But in the back office, Tyrell sat in silence, staring at a manila envelope on his desk. It had no return address. Inside, a photo of him and Marcus walking near the center. A copy of his sealed juvenile record. Leaked. A single note. We warned you. Next come. S your people. Leon stormed in moments later, face red. They're dragging your name through everything, man. Some news site just ran a headline. From gang to guru, the real Tyrell Banks. They're calling you dangerous. Let them, Tyrell said coldly. Truth was never going to be quiet. But even as he said it, he knew. This wasn't about reputation anymore. This was about safety. He called Laura. We need cameras around the center. Security. A lockdown protocol. If they're coming for us, I want us ready. Across the city, in an upscale hotel suite, Senator Klein was on the phone with Roland Wexler. You said he'd fold, Klein snapped. He didn't, Roland replied, which makes him more useful to some and more dangerous to others. I want this boy gone from every ballot, every school, every headline. Roland chuckled. Then you'll need to cut deeper. Find someone close to him. Someone who still hasn't decided what side they're on. Klein narrowed his eyes. I think I know just the one. Back at the center, Mickey showed up again. He hadn't been around much since Jason's arrest. He'd kept his distance, saying he needed time to think. But now he walked in quiet, eyes low. Tyrell greeted him with a nod. You good? Mickey nodded, hesitated, then said, Listen, there's something I need to tell you. But you can't freak out. He closed the door and pulled out his phone. Someone's been trying to flip me. Since the forum. Offering money. Protection. Told me to spy on you. Said you were about to get hit from higher up. Tyrell's blood chilled. You say anything? Nah, Mickey said. But I recorded the call. He played a clip. The voice was masked but deliberate. 8. Cold. Clean. You got access. That's all we need. Find something. Or plant it. Either way. Make it fall. Laura brought the recording to a trusted contact inside City Hall. But within hours they receive a notice. Due to recent allegations, the Second Path program's city funding is hereby suspended. Ed, pending review. Tyrell stared at the paper. Leon slammed his fist against the table. They're not even pretending anymore. They're cutting us off. No, Tyrell said. They're trying to starve us. That night, Laura found Tyrell on the rooftop again. You sure you want to keep pushing? She asked softly. You could leave now. Save yourself. Go to college. Write a book. Get a contract. Tyrell looked out over the city. I didn't start this to make noise. I started it because we were dying quietly, one corner at a time. Then he turned. If they're cutting us off, we go direct. Crowdfunding. Live interviews. City tours. They want to bury me? I'll plant something in every place they dig. He reached for his phone. It's time to go national. Meanwhile, inside a federal building in Lower Manhattan, 2 agents reviewed new intel. This boy's got too much pull, one muttered. He's untrained, unprotected, and unfunded, but still rising. We flag him. The other agent shook his head. No, we don't flag Tyrell Banks. He clicked a file open. We flag the people trying to destroy him. Betrayal in the bloodstream. 2 weeks later, the whole city had changed again. The government may have frozen the Second Path funding, but the people didn't. Tyrell's story had gone viral again. This time not because of drama, but resilience. A video of him holding up the funding freeze notice and saying, "You can't cancel the truth," was shared over 10 million times in 5 days. Donations poured in. Local churches opened their basements. A Harlem DJ hosted a citywide fundraiser. Even a retired NBA player for Brooklyn pledged $100,000 to open a second youth hub. But with growth came shadows. Tyrell had become a lightning rod, hailed as a hero by thousands, hunted by a few. And he didn't know it yet, but the betrayal wasn't coming from enemies in suits. It was coming from someone inside the circle. At the newly opened youth hub in Queensbridge, Tyrell stood in front of a packed gym. "We're not waiting on change anymore," he said into the mic. "We are the change." Leon stood beside him, amped. Mickey sat in the front row, clapping. Laura was coordinating press interviews. Everything felt like it was finally turning in their favor. But what Tyrell didn't know was that someone had planted a flash drive in the office computer just 48 hours earlier. A drive containing false financial records. Records that made it look like Tyrell was laundering money through the center. And worse, it was planted by someone with access. Later that night, while the crew celebrated with pizza and music, Mickey slipped away, his phone in hand. He moved to the alley beside the building and answered a call. The voice on the off. Her end was D. "Stort. It's done." Mickey hesitated. "Yeah. The files are in. You'll be protected." "Yo. Our name won't come up." "You sigh. D. No one would get hurt." "No one will. Unless they deserve it." The line went dead. Mickey stood still, face pale. His hands shook. He had told himself this would buy protection for his cousin, who was facing trial. He hadn't meant to take down Tyrell. He never thought it would go this far. But now, he had crossed a line. The next morning, agents showed up at the community hub. Warrants in hand, guns holstered, suits pressed. "Tyrell Banks," one said. "That's me. We're placing you under federal investigation for financial misconduct related to youth center operations. You're not under arrest, but we need to ask you to come with us." Leon jumped forward. "You kidding?" He's been transparent since day one. Tyrell raised a hand. "It's okay. Let me go. I've got nothing to hide." As they walked him out, reporters swarmed the street. Cameras flashed. Yeah, the lines formed before facts. Tyrell Banks under federal probe. Hero or hustler. Fall of the Bronx Messiah. Inside the building, Mickey watched it all from a back window. He didn't cry, but he wanted to, because he hadn't just betrayed a movement. He betrayed a friend. Hours later, Tyrell sat in a cold federal room, answering questions. He stayed calm, gave receipts, provided every detail. But the agents weren't interested in clarity. They wanted cracks. "You've had anonymous donors. How do you know they weren't dirty? You've taken in former gang members. Are you sure they aren't moving cash on the side?" Tyrell's voice never wavered. "I'm sure, because I built this from the inside out." But then they dropped the real blow. "We received evidence from inside your own team. Someone very close to you." Tyrell froze. His heartbeat roared in his ears. "Who?" They slid a page across the table. Mickey's name, his signature, time-stamped logs, everything. Back at the center, Leon confronted Mickey the moment the news broke. "You did this? After everything?" Mickey backed into a wall. "I didn't mean to. They had my cousin. I thought it was just leverage. They said no one would get hurt." Leon's fist clenched. "You sold him out. And for what?" Mickey dropped to his knees, tears finally falling. "I messed up, man. I messed up bad. But it was too late. The damage had been done." That night, Tyrell was released with no charges. Not yet. But he knew it was only the beginning. The system didn't need to lock you up to destroy you. They just needed to make people doubt. He stood outside the federal building, face blank, Laura beside him. "You okay?" she whispered. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm not done." Rebuilding through fire. The night air felt heavier than usual as Tyrell walked back into the youth center. Not as a leader returning in triumph, but as a man whose name had just been dragged through mud by someone he once called brother. Inside, the place was quieter than usual. No music, no laughter, just the soft squeak of sneakers on tile and a few side glances from kids who weren't sure what to believe anymore. Leon was waiting near the back wall, arms crossed. His face told the truth before he spoke. "Half the city's still with you, but the other half's waiting to see if you'll fall." Tyrell nodded. "Then we show them we don't bend. Not even now. You ready for this?" Tyrell took a deep breath. "Call everyone. Staff. volunteers, kids, donors. I'm going to face it head on. All of it. An hour later, the rec room was packed. Some stood, some sat with folded arms. Even Laura, usually calm, looked unsure. And near the back wall, standing alone, was Mickey. Tyrell walked to the front, silence trailing behind him like a shadow. Then he spoke. Some of you saw the headlines. Some of you read the leaks. You're wondering if this place, if I, were ever real. He scanned the room. The answer is yes. Because we weren't built on money. We were built on pain. On second chances. On street kids refusing to die quiet. He paused. But even family makes mistakes. He turned toward Mickey. All eyes followed. Mickey looked down, ashamed, ready for the explosion. But instead, Tyrell said, he did wrong. He lied. He gave power to people trying to destroy us. And still, I forgive him. Gasps. A few shook their heads. But Tyrell kept going. Not because what he did was okay. It wasn't. But if we're really building a future, then we don't destroy each other the way the system wants us to. We hold each other accountable. And then we rebuild. Mickey stepped forward, voice trembling. I'll resign. Walk away. I shouldn't even. Tyrell cut him off. You're not walking away. You're working your way back. From the bottom. Because if we don't fix our own, someone else will just use them again. The room stayed silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. And soon, the room thundered with applause. Not because they forgot the betrayal, but because they saw what real leadership looked like. Grace under fire. Meanwhile, across the city, Roland Vexler watched the live stream with clenched fists. How's he still standing? He snarled. Senator Klein, sitting across from him, sipped wine calmly. Because we underestimated him. We hit him like he was a kid on the corner. But he's not anymore. Roland leaned forward. Then what now? Klein's eyes darkened. We stopped playing PR games. It's time to end this behind closed doors. He pulled out a file lab. Yield. Operation Null Voice. Inside, a plan to use zoning laws, IRS probes, school board pressure, and federal funding regulations to cut off Tyrell's reach city by city. Not by scandal, but by suffocation. Back at the center, Laura approached Tyrell quietly. You didn't have to forgive him, you know. Tyrell's eyes stayed fixed on the door where Mickey had just left. Yeah, I did. Because if we don't build something different than what broke us, then what's the point? Laura smiled, eyes glistening. You're more dangerous than they ever realized. Tyrell didn't smile. Then they better realize quick because I'm not done yet. The national stage. A month later, the fight left the city streets and climbed the marble steps of Capitol Hill. Tyrell's rise could no longer be confined to the boroughs of New York. His story had reached classrooms in Chicago, shelters in Atlanta, community gyms in Detroit. Videos of his speeches played in high schools, his name print. D on banners beside the words. Not Bo. RN broken. Built by survival. And then came the biggest moan. NT yet. An email marked urgent. Mr. Banks, you are invited to speak at the upcoming National Youth Justice Debate. The panel will include members of Congress, law enforcement leaders, and you, Tish, a voice of the next generation. Tyrell reread the message twice, then looked up at Laura and Leon, who sat across from him in stunned silence. They're giving you the mic, Leon whispered, in front of the whole country. Or giving me the noose, Tyrell said. If I mess this up, they'll use it to bury everything we built. Laura nodded slowly. Then we go prepared. This is more than a speech. This is war in a suit. The debate was said in Washington, D.C., inside the historic Kennedy Forum Hall, where legislation had been born and buried for generations. Now it was about to become the battleground for something far more personal. As Tyrell walked backstage, his hands clenched the note cards he never used. He wore a tailored black suit, donated by a local designer who said, "You wear this for all of us." His tie was simple, his eyes sharper than ever. On stage sat the moderator, a congressional subcommittee chair, a sheriff from Texas, a conservative youth organizer, and finally, Tyrell Banks. As the debate began, the first questions were polite, surface level. But then, the moderator turned to Tyrell. Mr. Banks, some say your movement is emotional, not sustainable. That reform from the inside works better than revolution from the outside. How do you respond? Tyrell leaned into the mic. I've sat on the inside of detention centers, of bad classrooms, of ignored hospital rooms, and all I saw was a system asking broken kids to fix themselves before giving them a reason to live. He paused, letting the room settle. So no, I didn't come here to offer emotion. I came to offer urgency. The crowd murmured. Cameras panned to the faces of stunned panelists. The sheriff shifted in his seat. You talk about urgency, but what about law? You've worked with ex-gang members. You took funding from people with criminal records. Don't you think that makes you unfit to lead? Tyrell didn't flinch. I don't lead because I'm perfect. I lead because I survived. And because I turned people who were once in the dark into lights for others. If we keep judging people by who they were, we'll never give them a chance to be who they could be. Applause broke out in the balcony. Teachers, parents, even one congresswoman wiped a tear. But then came the planned attack. Senator Klein, watching from the wings, had arranged for a last-minute audience question to be injected into the debate, submitted by a concerned parent. The moderator read it aloud. Mr. Banks, is it true your movement received over $30,000 from a donor tied to an unsolved gun trafficking case in 2018? If so, do you believe your platform is complicit in weaponizing the very streets you claim to be saving? The room went dead. Tyrell's heart pounded. He knew the name. It was Marcus Vaughn, an ex-con turned philanthropist who donated once before dying in a car accident. He'd never told anyone where the money came from. Tyrell stood slowly. Yes, Marcus donated to us. Once. I didn't ask where the money came from, because when the city refused to fund Hope, he stepped in. Does that make me complicit? Or does it make the system guilty for leaving us no other choice? Silence again. I don't regret what we built with that money. I regret that the city left a gap so wide that people like Marcus had to fill it. Then he turned directly to the camera. To every city watching, if you want clean hands in this fight, start by cleaning the places you've abandoned. Don't point fingers at those of us building ladders from rubble. The crowd exploded. Standing ovation. Journalists rushed to file their stories. Live comments on the streaming feed filled with, "This is the voice we've waited for. Banks 2028, realer the," and every politician on that stage. Even a few members of Congress stood up, quietly but powerfully. Backstage, Laura hugged him tightly. You didn't just win, you changed the arena. Tyrell exhaled for the first time in hours. But as they packed up, a Capitol secured. Y agent handed him a note and signed. Congratulations. You made it past the gate. But the wolves are just inside the garden. He folded it, tucked in his pocket. Because Tyrell now understood. He hadn't just spoken of power. He had stepped into it. And power doesn't like new blood. The strings attached. It was only 3 days after the televised debate when Tyrell got the call. Mr. Banks, this is Evelyn Rains from the Dominion Opportunity Foundation. We'd like to offer your movement a national platform. Tour sponsorship. A full-year grant. $500,000. Unrestricted. Congratulations. Tyrell blinked. Phone pressed to his ear. I appreciate it. We've sent over the documents. Just a formality. When you're ready, we'll announce it publicly. The media's waiting. They hung up. The room fell silent. Laura and Leon sat across from him in the news center's office, still dusty with the smell of paint and hope. Tyrell held the sleek folder like it was both a treasure and a trap. $500,000, Leon said. That's buses, food programs, more centers. Teachers, travel, tech, security, Laura added. It could change everything. Tyrell opened the contract. At first, it looked perfect. Legal language. Tim, Eileen's. Bullet points. Then page 6. Clause 4.7. Public representation. Grantee shall refrain from any public statements, affiliations, or activities that the Dominion Foundation or its corporate affiliates deem to be politically divisive, disruptive to national interests, or damaging to the Foundation's brand and partnerships. Tyrell read it again. Then again. He slowly placed the folder on the table and whispered, "They want to buy my silence." Leon leaned forward. "Wait, that's what that clause means." Laura nodded grimly. "If you speak out about police violence, they could pull the grant." If you call out a senator, same. Even if you tweet something too disruptive, they could erase you. Tyrell's eyes darkened. They don't want a movement. They want a mascot. He stood up, paced the room. This isn't money. It's a leash and gold wrapping. Later that night, Tyrell stood on the rooftop alone again. He thought about Marcus, his mom, the kids at the centers who now believed in something bigger than the streets. All of them depended on the growth, but growth without voice was just another cage. Then his phone buzzed. Aga. In. A message from an anonymous contact. Every movement hits this moment. Sell your truth, or pay for it. See who's fast before they choose for you. He locked the screen and whispered to himself, we'll build without their blood money, even if it's brick by brick. The next morning, Tyrell called a press conference. Journalists packed the sidewalk. Microphones pointed. He stepped up and said, yesterday I was offered a $500,000 grant to expand our work across the country. And I said no. Gasps. Camera shutters. Why? Because the contract required that we silence ourselves. That we agree not to speak against injustice or challenge those who profit from our pain. That's not help. That's cant. Roll. He raised a fresh sign, handwritten. Hope would ho. T freedom is just another form of prison. The crowd roared. Hashtag. GS trended before he even finished speaking. Hashtag in. OT for sale. Hashtag Tyrell said no. Hashtag real leaders don't fold. But in a quiet boardroom uptown, Evelyn Rain stood at a window, phone pressed to her ear. He declined. D, she said flatly. A voice responded coldly. Then begin contingency operations. He doesn't just need to be stopped anymore. He EDS to be discredited. Publicly. Permanently. Evelyn nodded. Understood. She turned to a thick manila envelope label. D. Banks file, Phase 2, destroy from within. Inside. Photos, forged texts, clips taken out of context, a fake memo linking Tyrell's center to extremist organizations. She smiled without joy. Let's see how the people react when they don't know what's real anymore. The war for truth. Within 48 hours, everything changed. Not with violence, not with arrests, but with rumors. It started small. An anonymous thread on a fringe political forum. Is Tyrell Banks hiding ties to extremist groups? Then a shadowy Instagram post. You think he's hope? Look closer. Next came the fake documents leaked to a third-rate blog. Doctored text between Tyrell and a known radical. An edited audio clip where his voice said things he'd never spoken. By the end of the week, local news stations were running segments titled, The Dark Side of Tyre. LL Banks. Who is the real face behind the movement? And by Monday morning, the damage had gone national. Inside the youth center, the usual buzz had gone still. Staff whispered. Teens stared at their phones. Even volunteers looked at Tyrell differently. Not with fear, but with doubt. Leon burst through the door. Bro, it's everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, even a fake email chain saying you took bribes from gangs. They're flooding the internet so fast we can't even respond. Laura looked pale. The disinformation is layered. Sophisticated. They're blending truth and fiction just enough to confuse the people who believed in us. Tyrell sat quietly. Then he stood, walked to the window, and said, they don't have to prove anything. They just have to make people question everything. That night, the tour was vandalized. SP. Ray paint across the front doors. Liar. Fraud. Puppet. Someone had smashed the windows. A firework had scorched the back wall. No injuries, but the message was clear. Even worse, some of the graffiti was written in handwriting Tyrell recognized. Local. His own neighborhood. The next morning, he held a town hall at the community center. No press. No security. Just chairs, truth, and whoever was willing to listen. It was packed. Some came angry. Some afraid. Many confused. Tyrell stepped up without a mic. They're trying to make me unrecognizable. Even to you. He raised a printout of the fake texts. This? Fake. So is the audio. So are the donation records they found. But the lie works if you believe it faster than I can disprove it. He paused. So let me tell you what's real. The nights I slept on concrete. The kids who left gangs because of us. The mothers who don't cry anymore because their sons are home safe. That's what they can't fake. A boy in the back, no older than 13, stood and asked, "But what if they keep lying?" Tyrell looked at him. "Then we keep telling the truth louder, until the lie gets tired." Slowly, the room clapped. One by one, the fear began to melt. But outside, the war continued. That same day, an agent from a federal cyber unit handed a report to their supervisor. The campaign targeting Tyrell Banks is foreign-influenced. Looks like coordinated disinfo out of a domestic lobbying firm with offshore ties. Same playbook used to kill grassroots before. The supervisor raised an eyebrow. Do we intervene? No clearance yet. The P. Political fallout would be nuclear. They stamped the file. Active threat. Information warfare. Target. Banks, Tyrell. Priority, high. Back in New York, Tyrell stood with Leon and Laura over a map. Pins marking every youth center, every safe zone, every school visit planned across the country. Leon asked the question they were all thinking. Do we pull back? Tyrell stared at the map, then at the smear campaign, still trending online. Then back at the door, still spray-painted with hate. And he said, no, we go bigger. We go faster. We go realer than they ever expected. He grabbed a SH, RP, and wrote across the top of the map, Truth Tour 2025. Because if they were going to kill his voice, Tyrell was going to make sure the whole country heard first. The Atlanta incident. The Truth Tour began like wildfire. From Newark to Baltimore to Philly, Tyrell and his growing team held packed-out rallies, youth workshops, and sit-down conversations with city officials, educators, ex-gang leaders, and teens who'd never once been asked what they needed. By the time the tour reached Atlanta, momentum felt unstoppable. The event was set at Grant Park Amphitheater, an open-air venue with space for 4,000. Local organizers had set up food trucks, community booths, and even a mural station where kids could paint their hopes beside the words. Real change doesn't ask permission. Tyrell stood backstage, dressed in a gray tee, black jeans, and boots dusted from travel. Leon stood beside him, scanning the crowd with practiced eyes. It's full. Like, full, Leon said. This might be the biggest one yet. Laura joined them, headset buzzing. CNN's covering live. We got 2 Congress reps in the crowd. Maybe 3. Be ready for anything. Tyrell smiled. That includes trouble. And trouble came. Not through violence, but through design. The rally began with spoken word from local poets. Then a teen choir. Then a testimony from a kid who'd once held a gun at 13, but now taught robotics in a community garage. When Tyrell finally took the mic, the park was electric. This isn't just a tour, he told the crowd. This is the people's court, and we're putting injustice on trial. Cheers. They try to bury our names in lies. They try to break us with silence. But here we are. Louder, sharper, wiser. More cheers. But as he paused for breath, a sudden voice from the center of the crowd screamed out, You're a fraud, Banks. You're funded by thugs. The energy cracked. Heads turned. Cameras panned. Tyrell squinted into the crowd. A young man in a hoodie and cap was waving a printed evidence packet in the air. Security began to move, but the man shouted again. Tell him about the $15,000 you got from the Foundation for National Defense. You're just another puppet. The crowd buzzed. The name was real. The foundation had ties to defense lobbying and corporate prisons. The accusation hit like a live wire. Leon froze. Laura cursed. Tyrell didn't move. Then he stepped off the stage. He walked directly toward the man, mic still in hand. Security tried to stop him. He waved them off. The crowd fell completely silent. Face to face with the heckler, Tyrell said, What's your name, brother? The man blinked. Why? Why you care? Because I don't argue with ghosts. What's your name? A pause. Tyson. Tyrell nodded. Tyson, if I was bought, if I was fake, why would I walk off this stage, look you in the face, and give you the mic? And with that, Tyrell handed him the microphone. Gasps. Phones everywhere. Tyson stared at it. Stared at Tyrell. Then dropped it. Literally. Let it fall. I thought you'd run, he muttered. Tyrell bent down, picked up the mic, and turned to the crowd. That's the difference between a movement and a machine. A machine hides. A movement shows up. The crowd erupted. CNN's Live ED picked up the moment in crystal HD. Tags exploded again. Hashtag Tyrell didn't run. Hashtag face to face. Hashtag Truth Tour 2025. Later that night, after the rally ended and the music faded, Tyrell sat alone on the venue steps. Leon joined him, water bottle in hand. "You know that kid?" Leon asked. "Nope, but someone sent him, and they'll send more." Leon nodded. "You scared?" Tyrell looked up at the Atlanta skyline, lights blinking like stars too stubborn to fall. "Yeah, but I'm not stopping." Across the country, people who'd never heard of Tyrell Banks were now Googling him, watching that moment, talking about a new kind of leadership, one that didn't just yell, but listened, even to lies, even to planted enemies, even to fear, because Tyrell wasn't just leading a movement anymore. He was reshaping how people define power. The closed door offer. It came in a white envelope. No return address, no stamp, just a red wax seal marked with a single symbol. Velta. Inside was a thick card, heavy like glass, embossed in silver. "Mr. Banks, you are requested to attend a private roundtable. Location, undisclosed until confirmation. Attendees, 5. Topic, future influence, national alignment, and strategic integration. Your SVP will determine the direction of more than just your movement." At the bottom, non-disclosure required. You may bring one advisor. Tyrell read it 3 times. "This feels secret society level," Leon muttered. Laura studied the card under the light. "It's real. I've seen whispers of this in legal networks. They bring in people right before they hit critical mass. They don't make laws. They build the frameworks that laws grow on." Tyrell looked up. "So, they don't want to shut me down. They want to shape me." 3 days later, a black SUV picked up Tyrell and Laura at dawn. No logos, no driver name, just tinted windows and cold silence. They were driven for over an hour out of the city until the skyline gave way to hills, then forest, then a large glass building surrounded by trimmed hedges and no visible cameras. But Tyrell could feel the eyes. Inside, the room was round. 5 chairs faced us. Behind each, a figure of power. A Fortune 500 CEO, a Supreme Court clerk, a media conglomerate advisor, a tech billionaire, a former presidential campaign strategist. And at the center, an empty chair. They invited him to sit. One by one, they introduced themselves only by first names, but the weight of their voices said more than any resume. Then the strategist spoke. "Mr. Banks, your movement is loud, fast, viral, but is not yet scalable." Tyrell raised an eyebrow. "You brought me here to fix my outreach?" The clerk smiled. "We brought you here to offer reach beyond your dreams. National curriculum revisions, dedicated airtime, even a pipeline to future federal advisory positions." The tech executive leaned in. "We will sponsor everything. Take you from rallies to legislation, from boroughs to ballots." Tyrell's chest tightened. He felt the shift, the energy. This was not a threat. This was a crown. But the CEO added one more thing. "All we ask is that you agree to a stability clause." Tyrell narrowed his eyes. "Meaning?" The strategist placed a folder in front of him. No direct endorsements. No statements targeting sitting officials. No open condemnation of public systems. "You will still speak, but carefully." Laura inhaled sharply. Tyrell stayed quiet. "You want my voice," he said slowly, "but you want to own its volume." The media rep nodded. "We want to protect it. Unfiltered rage gets clicks. Filtered wisdom changes policy." Tyrell stood. "What if I say no?" The tech billionaire smiled thinly. "Then we wish you well. And remove the protections we've been giving you without your knowledge." Silence. Tyrell met every eye in the room. "You can't buy what I built." "We don't want to buy it," the strategist said. "We want to redirect it before someone else does." Tyrell stared down at the folder. The vision inside was tempting. Mass exposure, clean media, school programs, the ability to move mountains, if he walked carefully. He turned to Laura. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. If you take this, you become one of them. He turned back to the table. Then calmly, clearly he said, my movement wasn't born in boardrooms. It came from blood, silence, and survival. So here's my final offer to you. He picked up the folder, turned it around, and slid it back across the table. You can walk with us, but we don't walk behind anyone. And he walked out, without the folder, without the money, but with his soul intact. Back in the SUV, Laura was silent for half the ride. Then finally, she said, you just said no to the most powerful people in America. Tyrell leaned back in his seat. No, he said. I just said yes to everyone else. That night, at a small stop in Raleigh, he gave a stripped-down speech. No lights, no cameras. Just a mic and people. And for the first time, his voice shook, not with fear, but with unfiltered clarity. The tragedy that tested everything. The next morning, Tyrell woke to sirens and silence. Not from outside his window, but from his phone. It was blowing up. Calls, missed messages, hundreds of notifications, a news headline at the top of them all, screaming in all caps. Youth leader killed in targeted shooting outside Baltimore rally. Tyrell sat up in bed, heart punching his ribs. The name hit him like a truck. Ray Washington, age 19. Truth Tour regional organizer. Shot 3 times OU. Sighed Eastwood High after setting up for Tyrell Banks' upcoming visit. The screen blurred in his vision. Ray wasn't just an organizer. He was family. One of the first who believed in Tyrell when the movement was nothing more than ideas scratched on notebook paper. Leon barged into the hotel room, out of breath, face pale. You saw it. Tyrell nodded slowly. Laura was already on speakerphone. We don't know if it was random or planned, but the fact that Ray was targeted hours after we declined their offer, that's not coincidence. That's warning. Tyrell gripped the edges of the table. His hands were shaking, not just with grief, but with fury. By noon, the story was everywhere. Pundits speculated. Some painted Ray as a misguided youth. Others tried to link the shooting to rising tensions inside the activist world. But Tyrell, he stayed silent. Until that night. The candlelight vigil in Baltimore drew over 10,000 people. Every step he took toward the mic felt like walking through water. Thick with pain, drowning with pressure. He didn't have a speech. He just had truth. They killed my brother. His voice cracked immediately. Not because he carried a weapon. Not because he stole something. Not because he hurt anyone. They killed him because he believed in something bigger than fear. The crowd stayed completely still. They think this will silence us. That fear will unmake us. That if they cut out one voice, the choir stops. He looked up, eyes raw. But Ray wasn't just a voice. He was a spark. And now he's lit a fire they'll never control. People began raising candles. One by one, thousands of small lights. Tyrell pointed to them. This is how we win. Not with fists. Not with slogans. But with each other. Aga. In. And again. And again. The next day, national headlines called it Tyrell's strongest moment and most vulnerable. The movement suffers its first martyr. This isn't just activism. It's revolution. But in private, Tyrell broke down. Behind closed doors, he sobbed until his voice gave out. Until Laura held his hand and said, we don't have to be strong all the time. But we do have to keep going. Leon nodded. If Ray could see this now, he'd say, we better not quit. Or, I'll haunt your speeches forever. They all laughed through the grief. Because grief, for them, was now the fuel. Later that week, while visiting Ray's mother, Tyrell promised her something. We'll name the first nationwide youth hub after him. Not just a building, a school, a legacy. She hugged him, whispering, just promise me they won't bury you too. He couldn't make that promise. But he could promise this. They wouldn't bury the dream. And somewhere far away, in a private estate guarded by silent men, Evelyn Raines watched the vigil replay on a tablet. A man beside her muttered, it didn't break him. Evelyn turned the screen off. No, it made him immortal. She stood, walked to a hidden door, and entered a dark hallway. On the wall, a new target list. Tyrell's name was now circled in red.